guest this evening is a talented writer, actor, comedian, producer, and director. He hails from the Midwest state of Illinois. He is also administrator for the Ace Comic Con fan group, which is one of the premier Comic Cons in the country. Please welcome to the Eclectic Arts virtual studio, Mr. John Krauser. John.
Whoa, hey, what's going on, everyone? Wow, good to be here. I'm sorry,
Awesome.
I'm in my stage mode right now. I'm like, hey, wow, hey guys, what a crowd.
Awesome. How are you over there in Illinois?
Oh man, it's as good as you're gonna get. You know, with the circumstances, you just have to find a way to keep yourself sane and happy and busy, and thankfully I've been able to do that. So cool.
Yeah, you were telling me pre-show that you'd spent quite a few hours today working on writing and getting things prepared. And can you kind of walk me or take me back? When did you first get interested in any aspect of the arts? You know, comedy, acting, writing, all those things. When did was that as a small child? Later?
It was a small child, and from a very early age, I was a little chubby kid. Didn't have a lot of friends, but I had a lot of like toys and stuff. So I'd play with the toys and I'd make my own movies with the toys, like 3-hour-long bangers where people die and kept coming back to life, stuff like that. Just silly things. Eventually I grew out of my shell, met friends, high school, made some silly videos, but really it was always in my personality. I never did anything with it ever. That my personality was like that. I was like that around my friends. I was entertaining people. Didn't really come out until I would say late 2017 when I saw the film The Greatest Showman of all movies. I saw it in theaters. I think it was either came out around Thanksgiving time or Christmas time or in between. I saw it, and that movie like really spoke to me. Like the music and the words and the meanings of everything. It was all about like, be yourself, go after what you love, do it with all your heart. So I left that theater and I'm like, where do I go now? And the first thought in my head was you should do improv comedy classes. So I started locally doing improv classes about January 2018. I started my first improv class in Schaumburg, Illinois, Laugh Out Loud Theater. Long story short, the last 2 years has been wild. After maybe 3 or 4 months of just doing straight improv, I got the balls to write my own sketch show with absolutely no experience whatsoever. Just a few ideas in my head, and I pitched it to a theater, Second City. I was shocked that they approved it, and that was my first show. Yeah, so that's kind of, if that answers the question. That's like a long-winded answer to that. Yeah.
No, that absolutely answers the question. I think what's kind of nice is that there's been parallels with people, the other guests that I've had on so far on this tour, that talk about something similar. About sometimes you just have to put it out there and see what sticks, and you'd be surprised what sticks and what resonates with people. And the fact that they wanted to put on your show is awesome. And can you speak a little bit to people that don't know the history of Second City?
Oh, it's like comedy church is what I like to call it. The first thing you see when you walk near the building, you see a wall of faces facing you. The first one you see above the Second City marquee is Chris Farley. Farley got his start there. And you go down the wall, Harold Ramis, John Candy, Rick Moranis, all these people from the 80s and 90s got their start there. Basically, that original Saturday Night Live cast got their start at Second City, whether it was the Toronto school or the Chicago school, and then some modern day people like Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, they got their start at Second City, Chicago. So this place has like a legacy to it. And when they're like, hey, we like your show idea, here's 3 Friday nights in October for your show, I was like, what? Like I couldn't believe it. And I, at that point, I'm like, well, now what do I do? I'm like, well, I have to get a cast. So here I am, no idea what I'm doing. I throw out a few casting calls on some websites and Facebook, and I had about 30 people come out to my first audition. I had my good friend Nick, who is not involved in theater whatsoever. He came with me because I wanted a second opinion of someone who's an outsider's opinion. And we did this round of auditions, and it was a blast. And it was also awkward because there was a lot of like odd people who come out to that, you know. And then I'm like, but I'm an odd guy too. But I'm talking like, in my head, odd is like egomaniacs. So there were a few people who had the script and they're like, I want to make all these changes to the script. So I'm like, I'm like, dude, you're auditioning for the show. Why are you telling me what to change? Then you get the people who are like, I got awards, and I'm like, dude, this is a comedy show about a magician who can't do magic. Like, what, like this isn't like you're going for a Tony or something here, you know.
That's when you want to make those people disappear.
Yeah, like, but yeah, I years ago I developed this character named Brain Freak. He's a magician who can't do magic at all. He thinks he can, but he's delusional. So let's say you have a deck of cards, you pick it, you show it to the audience. I have him put it on the top of the deck, and I stand there and I'm like, and I pull the top card out. I'm like, is that your card? And they're like, yeah. And then everyone's like, oh, he did magic. You know, that was it. And before that first Second City show, I was going to open mics as the character, just playing around with I had no plan or any idea. And I did that. I got casted on a show as the character, which was cool. So that was, yeah, like I auditioned for this random show, and I came in as the Brain Freak character, and they liked it. So they casted it in the show and wrote lines for the character. So I did that before I started doing my own stuff.
That's really amazing that you're probably coming up with this character and the name of Brain Freak, and you're, like you said, you went to open mics just to kind of mess around, and then you get cast in the show as the character. And this just proves my point of what I've been saying to people during the course of this tour, that you just never know what's going to happen with certain things and where life's going to take you. And so with Brain Freak, was that the name of your show when you were doing it then, or was it something different?
Yeah. October. That was my first ever like production of. I had done so many just improv shows because while I was doing stuff at Second City, and I'm not like an official Second City cast member. What I do is on the lower level, like self-funded, people-funded student show level. You know, I'm not up on those main stages, so they give you the 50 seaters, but in my head, I love it. That's good enough for me. But even before that, I was doing improv classes in the suburbs of Chicago here, in front of maybe 20 to like 100 people every month or so, maybe one or two shows. So I was doing stuff, but October of last year was like my first production. That was my baby, and it was a complete failure. It sucked. Let me tell you, it sucked. I advertised it. I thought it was smart to advertise it as an actual magic show. So people came thinking they'd see magic.
Oh, yeah.
And I love Andy Kaufman. You know, Kaufman, I love him. He just messed with people's heads. That was my goal. I was like, these people think it's a magic show. Well, my first show, within 5 minutes, people were starting to walk out because they realized what it was. And after that first show, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to market it as that. I'm going to tell people what it is, you know. And they got better. I had a lot of issues with that first cast. There were some creative differences. One person left after just one show. So in the middle of our 3-show run, I had to rewrite the entire show after the first show happened for the last two. So, and I found that out that she was leaving on the train heading to show number 2. So in 40 minutes, I had to write an entirely different show for 2 people instead of 3. But you learn that way. You learn what works and what you can allow. Like, this is your idea, you shouldn't settle for anything less. You know, you shouldn't. You can make changes if they're brought to you appropriately and if they make sense, but if it's just for the sake of changes, if that makes any sense at all, what I just said.
No, it does, because it reminds me of one of the interviews I had done with an actor, and I was talking about one of my past jobs. I worked as an audio engineer, and sometimes I was like the second to the last person in the chain in terms of, like, the animators would do their thing, and then somebody else would do something, and then it come to me, and I turn it over to the programmers. But sometimes our deadlines were like, midnight on Friday, and it's fine if I know that changes are coming up, But if you
Yeah.
give it to me when I got 2 minutes, then it becomes like, I'm going to do what I can to solve the problem, but I'm not going to like you very much.
It was a rocky October. Was a great experience, but also it was stressful. And there was a part of me was like, do I even want to try again? And I'm so glad I did, because I wrote a new show and we did it at Second City in December, and we had 4 straight sellouts in December on
Awesome.
Saturday nights, 4 straight sellouts. That's from the cast. The cast I became friends with outside of the show. Some of us still write together. We went to California together, did a show in California. So that show was a big success, and everyone involved. I think I sent that show to you. That's the show I sent to you, the December one, and it just every night it got better, and everything clicked so well.
So let me ask you this, because I'm just always one of those curious kind of people.
Yeah.
From the show in October to the one that was a huge success in December, what kind of changes did you make?
In the audition process, I told people as they came in, like, this is the script. It's not going to change unless you think of another idea that would make more sense in a scene. So as I told you off air, my shows are very improv heavy. I'll write down a situation, and I'll write down why it happens, who it happens to, what are their reactions. Dialogue is all improv, but we stick to those guidelines in that scene, and then we move to the next one. So it's a nice flow. So I told people in this audition process that this show is a team effort, and we make decisions as a group. And if there's any changes to the meat and potatoes of the scripts, please feel free to bring them to me, because I'm cool with making changes if you have a funny idea, or if the idea just makes more sense than what we're trying to do. So I'm 100% open to changes, because my ideas in my own head might not make sense. Someone else might see it, have a different perspective, and we go that way, and I'm cool with that. But I'd say 99% we changed a little bit of December from what I wrote, but it was all stuff that I loved and agreed on. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the big change. It wasn't letting people walk all over me,
Got it. No, that makes sense. I'm guessing that from the October experience, you really started to feel what your vision is for that second project, and then knowing, like you just said, you have some wiggle room if something can maybe be better. But for the most part, I'm rolling with this because this is what I believe in.
Yeah, for example, the ending was completely different than what we went with in December. I wrote this big wedding scene, but it ended up becoming a seance scene. Complete 180. It was a complete 180, but in the world of the show, it made sense, and it heightened everything we were doing, and it just was really funny. So I'm glad that we came up with something different than what I had. So I'm very reasonable, but there are certain things where I'm like, I really want this to happen. Like you can't, you can make a different thing by what you say, it's pretty simple. Then, right after December, we hopped right into writing a show for Los Angeles. Second City, LA, reached out to me, and they're like, we heard you work really hard and you did really well with these December shows. Do you want a date in February? So, around late December, I talked to the cast about it, and we all agreed to go out there together, and we wrote an entirely different show from scratch in about a month and a half, with dialogue. I didn't do any of the writing because I wasn't good with dialogue at the time. I don't know how to. I could talk, but I had no idea how to write what people are saying to each other to make it sound like a regular conversation. It's weird. It's very weird. So they did all the writing, and I just inspired a few scenes, and that was my first ever show with written dialogue, and I was terrified. Yeah.
So do you foresee your future projects and future shows always having not only improv and dialogue that you just mentioned, but kind of having that comedy thread within them? Or you ever see yourself doing something strictly drama oriented?
I can't do drama. My goal in this is not money or fame. I want whoever's sitting in those seats to forget about their stresses and their problems and just have laughs. I want people to laugh and forget about what's going on outside of the walls. Or if they're even in a good mood, let's make them in a better mood. Like, I want them to have a good time. I tell people if I have a sellout show and only one person laughs, the whole thing was worth it for me because that one person had a good time. So yeah.
Awesome. No, I love that mentality.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for from it, and everything else is just gravy, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And being up there is the biggest rush I've ever felt in my life. I tell people all the time, and they don't believe me. For example, when I do improv shows, I black out. I don't know what I'm doing. I basically something else takes over, and I lose control. And you hear that with a lot of comedians. Sometimes they do that. For example, one show there was a window cutout on the wall, like for like a fake window. There's nothing there, just a cutout of a window. I dove through it, landed on my ass hard, and kept going with the scene. Whatever. A few hours later, we're having a few drinks, and I'm like, "Why does my ass hurt?" And they're like, Johnny, you jumped through a window. And I did. I don't have any recollection of that to this day. I don't remember doing that. Like it just things happen.
Wow. Yeah. You're just in the zone. And
I always am. Every show I'm in this. And I tell people this, I can't get into that zone unless I'm on stage about to go in front of a crowd. I can't just turn into that right here. I have to be in those situations for that to kind of come out.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
How do you, so having said that, how do you think you would do, like, let's say if someone from Hollywood came to you and said, we want to put you in a film where you have to do multiple takes and you have some of that rush, but you don't have an audience in front of you.
Oh, no, that's still creating. And I think I'll get to that level because well, first I think I would become that character because I'm really good at becoming the character that is either written for me that I write. So that would be easy to kind of become that. I don't know if that same rush of forgetting what I'm doing and losing control or whatever, but even when I had the dialogue in the California show in February, I nailed all my lines. I didn't forget any cue and I still don't remember the show. I have no clue. I don't have any recollection. I'll have to ask people. I'm like, was that funny? Did people laugh? Because I don't hear laughs. I don't hear anything out there. I don't hear what other people are saying either, but something else does. And that thing interacts with people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, as long as, like you said, that someone's enjoying themselves and you're not sure what you were doing, then everything works.
That's why I like having stuff recorded, like especially the non-planned improv shows, because I want to see what I do because I'm curious. And it's like a different. I can't recognize that person. Like I usually leave shows drenched in sweat, like just exhausted. People said that Farley used to do that, and I kind of feel the Farley thing. Yeah.
It almost sounds like that could be the seed for another show. Almost like I'm not picturing somebody sleepwalking where they don't know that they're doing it, but you have somebody like yourself on stage performing, and you don't know exactly what's going on until you're done, and until people tell you what happened.
Yeah, like a show with no plan. I'm just like, hey, come see John. He's on stage. I guess we'll see what happens. Like maybe I can't tell a joke, but maybe someone else will. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds crazy.
That sounds like an improv show, Mark. That's an improv show.
It does.
Yeah.
We've got about 8 minutes, and I want to kind of shift gears a little bit. As interesting as that was, it was fascinating to me. Like we were saying earlier off pre-show, that you had done a podcast for like 2 hours, and I think we probably could do the same thing right now. But I know I've got timelines and deadlines and all that.
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah. I want to switch gears into the world of comic conventions, specifically Ace Comic Con, and your love of, like you're showing me your Back to the Future stuff there, and Nightmare on Elm Street. And I've covered Ace Comic Con 2 years in a row, and I covered Crypticon Seattle here for like 6 different times. And what is it about fandom or comic book fandom that really resonates with you?
My first ever convention like that was C2E2. I can't even remember, maybe over 5 years ago now. And just walking through like the doors and then through the Comic-Con gates itself, it felt like a sense of home. Because you're around people that love the same thing you do, and everyone's just happy to be there. And everyone has their own loves and everything, but you're all passionate about something, and you're all in this big room and you're just nerding out over celebrities or merchandise and stuff like that. So that's why that was one of the reasons I kept going. And all my best friends went with me that year, and we all got hooked. So every time there's a convention like C2E2, Wizard World, or ACE that comes around, we like to go all out. And most of the time, like, even if we live out here, we're like 20 minutes from these shows, but we'll get hotel rooms and make like a trip out of it. And it becomes a mini vacation. Like this year, Wizard World is obviously not coming, but for the last 5 years, we've done Wizard World 4 days in a hotel, and it's 25 minutes from all of our houses. So it's a time to get together and do like your best friends and just goof off in a hotel, and then just be around all that nerd culture. It's awesome.
Yeah, I know a lot of the Crypticon Seattle folks out here that also live locally. They book their hotel rooms well in advance. They can't wait. They're going to be in the hallways every night, just doing everything. And it's really like their own summer camp.
Yeah, it is.
And
it's
like
fun.
you said, and you're around similar people, like you said too. So that's just, you're comfortable.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been to a Comic-Con where I was bored. Like, I've been to some small ones and to some of the biggest ones in the world, and I've had great experience at every single one of them.
That's awesome. And you were telling me pre-show that last year for Ace Comic-Con, that when you're there, fans were coming up to you, and what that experience was like. So can you kind of tell the folks out there that are watching this, what that was like?
So for building up to Ace Comic-Con Midwest, I was kind of heading the group that we're in. I did like a big video showing all the locations on where the show was going to be, from the hotels to the convention center, restaurants. I showed people how to use the trains. I did this big thing, and that kind of started with me like answering a lot of location-based questions, making people feel comfortable that you're coming to the Chicago area, but you're not going to get shot because it's not a bad area. And that just kind of, I started doing live Q&As. I kind of was helping people with general convention questions and location questions. So when it came time for the actual show, I was walking up to the hotel just to check in, and I was stopped 5 times before I got to the front desk just to take a picture in the hotel lobby. And I was like, okay, that was something, but I doubt it's going to be that crazy when I walk in. But when I walk in, I couldn't even walk down one aisle without 3 or 4 people like either stopping me to tell me I appreciate what you did, which was really touched me, and it was a humbling thing, and then to the surrealism of everyone's taking selfies with me, and I'm like, this is fun, but I never thought this would happen. Like, I felt like a celebrity there. Like, I felt like I needed my own. People tell me I needed my own table because I was with personal friends. And they would have to stop every 5 feet because someone stopped me for a picture. So they have to wait and then walk, and then another 5 feet, stopped again. Yeah. So as I told you off, when I went to the grocery store the day after, I was upset because no one at the grocery store wanted a selfie with me. I was like, who wants a picture? Like, it was humbling, and I was honored that people cared that much. And just as we said before, I love making people smile, but I also love helping people, making them feel happy and comfortable in any situation that they're in.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it's clearly coming across that way as we talked during the pre-show, and as we're talking now, that you can't hide that kind of thing. Sometimes people will say that, but then it doesn't really come across the right way. You completely come across genuine in terms of your intentions, and it's one of the reasons why I reached out to you. So I want to ask you this before we run out of time, because we've got about 3 minutes. So when you've been at any convention, not just ACE, but any convention, what's been one of your best interactions with a celebrity?
A lot.
For whatever reason.
So Back to the Future, as you look back there, I got the hoverboard and the hat. That's my favorite film franchise of all time. Wizard World, one year, they had the 3 main people, Christopher Lloyd, Michael J. Fox, Leah Thompson, come. And that was one of the most surreal moments of my life, because I got autographs and photo ops with each of them. And in the autograph line, I was literally in tears talking to these people because I was so just humbled to be there. And I told them what they meant to me at a young age when I didn't have a lot of friends. I had Back to the Future. So being able to tell them that, and then hearing their gratitude back to me, and then making like a little joke and smiling, and then going taking pictures with them the next day. Probably my favorite convention moment that will never be topped ever.
Wow, that's amazing, and that's one of the things that you and I know from going to these conventions that happens. That
Yeah.
it could be somebody that you grew up with that was really kind of there for you when maybe there's like a void in your life, and then 30 years later, you actually get to meet that person and tell them what they meant to you, and there they
Yeah,
are in the
yeah.
flesh.
Yeah,
Um,
I told Christopher Lloyd he terrified me, but I still love him because he was scary in Roger Rabbit, dipping those things in dip, you know.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
That's right.
but then I didn't even recognize that was him at first. I was because when I was young I didn't know, but in my teenage years I'm like, that's Christopher Lloyd, that's Doc Brown right there. So I told him that too. He thought that was funny. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, hey, John, I so appreciate you taking the time to talk with me
Yeah,
today
man.
and everybody out there that's watching and a part of the Alice tour. And I wish you
Mhm.
every success with all your shows and everything else that you have going on. So please don't be a stranger. And again, thank you so much for taking the time tonight.
Hey, my pleasure, my friend. Anytime you need me on, I'll hop on. We'll have a good time, man.
Sounds good. All right. Take
All right,
care.
man. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.